Friendless Heroines, How Isolation Creates the Identities of Anne Breed and Emma Woodhouse. Jane Austen created 6 memorable heroines in her completed novels. 4 of these are heroines who have multiple intimate connections in their lives, and these connections are mostly with other women. But Anne Elliot, Persuasion, and Emma Woodhouse of Emma are of a different stamp. They are isolated from female friendship and the support and opportunities for communication that it provides. Anne, through her grief, and Emma, through her wealth, stand apart from the society surrounding them. But more than this, they both cherish the separation and form their identities as adults from it. Both initially work at maintaining their singularity and even see it as something special and precious, as a defining characteristic necessary to their individual situations. It is only Anne who will break free of this position and form herself a new identity in a new world. Friendships, wise and unwise, come easily to Catherine Morland in Northanger Abbey. She's surrounded by a numerous family, probably the most realistically sized family in all of Austen's novels. She has an old friend, a common Austen trope, who provides guidance and travel. She has no trouble attracting friendship when she is relocated to Bath. In quick succession, she becomes acquainted with Isabella Thorpe and then Eleanor Tilney. Through them, she has access to their siblings as well, more females in the case of the Thorpes, as well as John Thorpe, who is an illuminating experience to their young minds. Miss Tilney has 2 brothers as well, one of whom Catherine comes to know very well indeed. It is through her connection to all these new friends that we, as readers, understand and grow to know Catherine. Catherine uses her friendships to learn about herself and her relation to the wider world. Eleanor Dashwood in Sense and Sensibility has an intimate relationship with her sister Marianne that is also her closest female friendship. Eleanor, as the heroine of this novel, and I know that's disputed and that's a whole other paper I could wander off into, has many other connections to society as a whole. One of the good examples that Eleanor provides for the sister is that of being polite and friendly to those who come within their circle. Although we are not presented with Eleanor as a social climber or a schemer, this habit of agreeableness does not do her a disservice in the wider society into which the Dashwood females are thrust. She is polite and friendly to Mrs. Jennings, which brings her acquaintance with the Palmers, useful later in providing Eleanor and Marianne with a refuge when they need to escape London. She is friendly towards the Steele females, which gives her pain, certainly, but also gives her useful inside information. She is polite to the Ferris family, even though she knows they dislike her. Her habit of friendliness is contrasted with Marianne's habit of solitary particularness, and it is Eleanor's way that's shown to be the most profitable, both in personal and monetary terms. In Pride and Prejudice, Elizabeth and Jane Bennet are just such another pair of bonded sisters, and Elizabeth has another intimate friend in Charlotte Lucas. Charlotte loses her place as Elizabeth's closest friend after her engagement to Mr. Collins, but although the friendship between them has changed, Elizabeth does not end it. She is friendly with Maria Lucas and with Georgiana Darcy, although they are both younger than her, and with Mrs. Gardiner, who is older and an aunt. Elizabeth has friendships across generations and even genders. Colonel Fitzwilliam is definitely more a friend than a suitor. Elizabeth is Austen's most social heroine, understanding her place in society as requiring her active participation and engagement. Fanny Price in Mansfield Park has a close fraternal relationship with all her siblings, but most especially with her brother William. Fanny also develops a close relationship with her sister Susan when their intercourse is resumed after many years' separation. Even Mary Crawford connects with Fanny, and their tentative friendship adds to the piquancy of the tangled romantic and sibling relationships at the heart of this novel. Repeatedly, Fanny tells us that Edmund is her friend, and the way he behaves towards her is certainly The eventual marriage that results has uncomfortable overtones of sibling and or friendly love, rather than the passion and romantic attachment he felt for Mary. Fanny Price sees herself as lonely and isolated, but she has social and emotional connections. She is lonely because she misses the physical presence of William, and because she's consumed with jealousy about Edmund and Mary's romance. If Edmund had been wooing Fanny instead of Mary, or even if he had been indifferent to Mary, it is likely the two women would have been friends. It is Fanny's jealousy that precludes this friendship, although she frames it as suspicion of Mary's worth. In a way, Fanny is the precursor to the isolated heroines. She feels herself isolated, although it's not actually true, and she is, like them, acutely aware of her place in society. But Fanny is aware, as Mrs. Norris constantly reminds her, that she must always be the lowest and the last. In contrast, Emma Woodhouse is first in consequence in her society, and Anne Elliot is even higher as the daughter of Sir Walter, a baronet. But before I move on to the friendless heroines, I'll look briefly at the outcomes in the novels for the first four women. Catherine Morland marries Henry Tilney, and I'm going to make people upset here. In spite of his frivolity and seeming playfulness, there is a current of unpleasantness running under Henry's civilised veneer. Catherine recognises it early when she knows how rude he has been to Mrs. Allen, but she ignores it in the excitement of her developing relationship with his whole family. With the example of General Tilney before him, it's not hard to imagine Henry becoming a similarly tyrannical husband. After all, his opinion of women is certainly low enough, as he expresses at some length in chapter 3. Although it may be in the form of an extended joke, this is the kind of sexist viewpoint that women the world over are currently decrying. And his framing it as just a joke is another thing that women now are saying is not good enough. Henry thinks women are foolish and uneducated, and Catherine unfortunately gives him no reason to change his opinion. And yet it's hardly Catherine's fault that education at the time was so much less available to women than it was to men. And her foolishness at Northanger Abbey is a direct result of Henry's manipulation of her. Catherine seems to be facing a life gaslighted by Henry once she is his wife. Eleanor Dashwood marries Edward Ferrars. He is her sister-in-law's brother, so he is already related to the family, and she acquires no one new in her life by this marriage. She moves to live in a village in which the big house belongs to Colonel Brandon, who is her new brother-in-law. One of the virtues, indeed, of Marianne's marriage is that the sisters will live almost within sight of each other. Eleanor's family has received one additional member in the two marriages that take place at the end of the novel. This is Colonel Brandon, and we know that he has no family of his own. His closest friend is Sir John Middleton, already a connection with the Dashwood women. Eleanor is tightly constricted in a circle that may soon include her new husband's parishioners, but seems unlikely to add social equals or bring her new friends. Elizabeth and Jane Bennet also remain in much the same or slightly smaller family circles after their marriages. Again, sisterly proximity is important. Jane and Elizabeth, in addition to every other source of happiness, were within 30 miles of each other. The people discarded by the marriages and consequent social elevation of the sisters are listed at the end of the novel. Mrs. Bennet, the Wickhams, the Meryton relations, Lady Catherine. Both women will have the social obligations of the wives of rich and important men, but the implication is that as they have each other, their intimate connections will not be expanded. Georgiana Darcy has the highest opinion in the world of Elizabeth, but that's not the same as friendship. Jane has no one but her husband and the visits of the impecunious Lydia, so her world is even more tightly constrained than Elizabeth. Fanny Price rejects explicitly the potential expansion of her family group when she rejects her birth family in Portsmouth She rejects also Henry Crawford, who would certainly have at least widened her horizons and experience of the world, and brought her many opportunities for new acquaintance. Instead, Austen winds Fanny more tightly into the dysfunctional Bertram family. All Fanny's connections are tinged with that hint of incest that makes us so uncomfortable. Her feelings for her brother are stronger than her feelings for Edmund. Even the conjugal tie is beneath the fraternal, Austen explicitly tells us in the text. Although Austen tries to undermine our bias against this familial romance, Fanny was brought up with Edmund. He is in so many ways her brother as much as William. They are first-degree blood relations, and she has lived under the same roof with the Bertrams for every bit as long as she lived with the Prices. Uncles, aunts, cousins, siblings all twist together in the hothouse atmosphere of Mansfield Park, and even Fanny's escape to Thornton Lacey is a short-lived one. Fanny is a heroine whose identity is so tied up with the place that she cannot live elsewhere, even when it seems obvious that moving back will be to her detriment. The reader can be confident that Fanny will never make a friend outside of the family, and that she will be cloistered by Bertrams and Prices until her dying day. To be clear, I'm not judging any of these women or their fictional outcomes, and I don't believe Austen is judging them either. Austen's novels question at some length the conventional contemporaneous position of the feminine. As part of this, she dispassionately lays before her heroines certain choices which are available to them as befits their personalities and situations. It is up to us as readers to decipher and interpret what other possibilities may or may not have been open to the characters. Emma Woodhouse and Anne Elliot, however, are very different women, as Emma and Persuasion are very different novels from the others. Emma is isolated by her wealth and her status and her idea of that status. She acknowledges that she should be friends with Jane Fairfax, but even so makes no move towards it. She adopts Harriet Smith as a kind of pet, having no real connection except a very patronising wish of improving her. Even her relationship with her governess, Miss Taylor, is one of open exploitation and imagined superiority on Emma's part, rather than friendship. Emma is isolated by her status and her physical location. Emma Knightley does not seem any more likely to have female friends in Highbury than Emma Woodhouse was. She's not entering a new society or even moving from her childhood home. Her life looks to be as isolated and isolating as it ever was, because the factors that isolated her, wealth and status, have been increased by her marriage. Her new husband's only family connection is already a relation of Emma's, as he married her sister. This relationship has not brought a single new person into her circle. Emma Woodhouse learns things, certainly, but she is not forced to move beyond her worldview by her knowledge. She will not be compelled to make friends with Jane Churchill after their respective marriages, nor can we imagine her wanting to do so. Her world will be circumscribed as it always was. She has added no one to her circle, and in fact, both Harriet Smith and Mrs. Weston have been one step further removed by the marriage of the first and the motherhood of the second. Emma is now living in the same house as always, with an extra difficult man to pander to. Mr. Elton's new wife cannot be her equal or her friend, and she is the only newcomer to the area. With both her father and her husband watching her every move, the first to monitor her safety and the latter to criticise and admonish her, Emma's world looks to be even more constricted than it was before her marriage. Anne Elliot's identity and persuasion is defined by her grief at the loss of her mother and her relationship with Wentworth, and she is isolated by her construction of that grief. She has no intimate connection with any member of her family, and her one friend is Lady Russell, a woman her mother's age who is actually her mother's friend. She is Anne's friend rather because she wishes it, rather than through any actual friendly women, hugging to herself her superiority of mind, as she says when she's watching the others dance, as some sort of comfort. But Anne has the possibility of breaking out of her isolation. It was created by grief over the breakdown of a romance that Austen tells us clearly lasted only a few months. Anne positions her disproportionate grief in the countryside and the small social circle of Kelly and Shaw. She rejects attempts to move her away and to find the only thoroughly natural, happy and sufficient cure in another relationship. She nurtures her grief and subsumes her personality to it. She creates an identity from it, the woman who is happy to play the piano for others and does not dance. But once she is removed from the familiar setting, she begins to recognise her isolation and move away from it. By the time of her marriage, she has renewed connections with old friends and made new friends amongst Captain Wentworth's circle. By moving into the Wentworth milieu, Anne has given up her connection to aristocratic status and the landed estate. With her marriage, she moves away from isolation and towards a new world. Emma Knightley is stuck in the old world of the rigid 18th century class system, but Anne Wentworth shows us the possibilities of the new century. She will live in a society that does not so much depend on birth and heritage, but where men like her new husband can influence their own outcomes and bring their families with them. To escape her isolation, Anne embraces change. She shifts her identity from that of grief-stricken spinster to a new self, reworked into a modern Navy wife. She's the first Austen heroine to move beyond her own idea of what is right and proper and into a new position in the world. Anne Elliot is the only Austen heroine to have explicitly added new friends and new family to her life by expanding her contacts, opening her heart to new and more trustworthy connections than her birth family. Anne is the only one of Austen's women to convincingly carry us